October 1967. I was ending my tour of duty in Vietnam. Not one day sooner than I was supposed to. It was a 365-day tour, and I had 3 days left. And for some reason, I was scheduled to fly a last combat mission on my Huey. And on the morning, 72 hours before I'm supposed to be leaving country, they got me up at sunrise and out on the flight line, checking out my aircraft and getting ready for a combat assault that day. Now, all night I was kind of feeling kind of antsy. And it wasn't just because I was a short timer and could be in combat. It just felt like something was going to happen that morning, that day. So I was uneasy, and there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I couldn't get out of the flight. I'm going to fly it, and I felt if I flew it, I was going to come back. But there was something was going to happen. I knew it, and I was on edge. It was a different feeling. So I went out there really early and checked out my aircraft from the rotors all the way down to the skids and nose to the tail. And I mean, I checked everything. I just felt there was something wrong. Something was going to happen, and I didn't know what. So pilots came out. They kicked the skids. They looked it over. They did a real quick pre-flight, trusting me as probably they shouldn't have. I'm not the world's greatest mechanic, but they did. And we got on the helicopter, and I got kidded about being a short timer and everything. We untied the blades. We got it going. We called Fuloy Tower for permission to taxi and to take off, and we hovered out to the runway, which is a long runway there. And outside this runway, a short distance from the end of the field, there's jungle. There's a canopy of triple covered jungle, trees and stuff out there that they'd slowly over time kept defoliating with Agent Orange, so it was getting less and less, but there was still some jungle out there. So we started going down the runway. We're building up transitional lift. We're starting to get 3 or 4 feet off the ground. And just about we're up about 5 feet, getting about 80 knots, maybe 60, 80 knots. It was hard to tell. I wasn't looking at the gauges. And all of a sudden, there's this boom, this small explosion. And all of a sudden, there's smoke filling the cabin of the helicopter. And I see fire coming out of the engine compartment. And so immediately we dropped down and we just skidded along to the end of the runway, basically, on our forward airspeed. And there's no brakes on a Huey. And there we sat, and the aircraft's on fire, and I jumped out, and my gunner on the other side jumped out, and we had to open the doors for the pilots because there's these armored plates that sat next to the seats that you had to slide them out. And it took a little effort to get in and out for the pilots, so they couldn't just jump out of a helicopter quickly. Anyway, we opened the door. We got the plate slid back, got them out. I grabbed a fire extinguisher underneath the pilot's seat, and I started extinguishing the flames as these fire trucks come rolling down the runway from the Fuloy Airport fire department, and all kinds of action going on and smoke and everything. And all I can just think is, this is my last flight. No way in the world I'm going to volunteer to go on any aircraft unless it's flying me home. So I put down the extinguisher while everybody was still standing there, and I just walked back from the end of the runway back to my hooch, sat in my bunk, and realized how close I was on my last official day of combat. Because we're talking 3, 4, 5 seconds later, if that explosion had happened, I'd been over the canopy of jungle and we would have crashed on top of trees, which would have been a twisting wreck, and somebody would have been injured or killed, or all of us. Yet the explosion went off just the last 100 feet or so of the runway, where we were able to just skid down to the end of it. Amazing timing. And if you're going to crash land, that's the best place to crash land is on the runway, and you can walk back. So that was my last mission in Vietnam. And my only concern then was to meet up with my buddy. I went over to Vietnam with a high school friend from my class. We met on 30 days leave before we went to Vietnam. We realized we had orders for the same place in Vietnam, and we were leaving the same time. I went to his wedding. This was Mike Harrison, a good buddy, and got on the airplane together, and we flew over to Vietnam and spent the first 3 weeks of Vietnam in the same places. Yet eventually we got separated with separate orders, and I got sent to Phu Loy, and he got sent to LBJ, Long Binh Junction, I believe, someplace in there. And my main concern was I going to see him on my return trip home? And so when I got to the center where they held everybody waiting for their flight to go back to Travis, I ran into him, and we ended up sitting next to each other on the flight. So that was kind of like a nice end to my Vietnam tour. I went over with a friend, came back. We were both all in one piece, healthy, wealthy, wealthy, and alive, barely. Anyway, that was my story. That was my last combat mission, and luck, God, blessings, whatever it was with me all the way up to the last day.